we want to look at some traveling myths. Travelers are told over and over again, if you leave your electronic devices on, well, maybe it could cause the plane to crash, or at least it's an interference with some system on the plane, and the right credit card will cover an accident with a rental car.
So this morning, it's time to separate fact from fiction. Travel editor Peter Greenberg is just the guy to do it. Good morning, and please tell me the guy in the next seat who's on his BlackBerry is not going to bring the plane down.
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, the guy in the next seat is you. And the answer is, it is a myth. Interestingly enough, the Federal Aviation Administration, let's start first with cell phones. Right, you have to turn them off when you get on the plane? Well, they've investigated this for at least 20 years. There is no conclusive evidence whatsoever that a cell phone transmission can interfere with anything on the plane. And yet the FAA and other independent organizations, including the British aviation authorities, they say no conclusive evidence, but we're still going to leave it to the individual airlines to set their own rules because nobody wants to take the heat for this.
But if it was really a danger, why would they let everybody onto a plane with a potential device that could bring the plane down?
Exactly. And interestingly enough, if you look at the technology of cell phones, how do they seek out a signal? In a conical way. If you're at 35,000 feet, the real concern from the FCC, it's not the FAA, is that you'd block out Cleveland looking for that cell phone, but you don't even get a signal at that altitude. So that is a myth. Now, it's still a rule, so you have to obey it, but the bottom line is it's not going to take the plane down. Now let's move on to your favorite subject, the BlackBerries and the iPads and the iPhones. Bottom line is, think about this. The FAA just gave American Airlines permission to have their own pilots use their iPads in the cockpit. Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know? I mean, bottom line here is, if they're going to be using the iPad within 3 feet of all that sensitive avionics instrumentation, and nothing happens, right? I've gone into cockpits of planes 10 years ago. They were doing Donkey Kong up there, you know? And so the bottom line is, it's not necessarily a technical issue, it's a safety issue. The airline wants you to pay attention. They don't want you to listen to your headphones and your iPod mix when the plane's, you know, at a critical takeoff and landing stage. And yet, they won't let you stop reading your newspaper. They won't make you stop reading your magazine. The bottom line is, the rule says this. Since the FAA cannot find any conclusive evidence, they leave it up to the individual airlines again to make the rule. But I'm one of those guys who says, stop this, let's get real about it, and hopefully one day they will.
Another myth you're getting real about is this whole question of insurance coverage. When you go out and rent a car, maybe you think my personal insurance covers this, or a lot of credit cards even market themselves as, you get our credit card, you're covered in the case of any problems with a rental.
A lot of credit card companies actually market their services saying, rent the car with our card, you get covered. Now let's talk about the fine print. It's not primary coverage. In most cases, not all, but in most cases, it's called secondary coverage. Let me explain what that means. That coverage only kicks in when you exhaust the entire limits of your first primary coverage policy. And if you don't have primary coverage policy, you are not covered.
So you have to take insurance at a rental company?
No, you don't, because in many cases, if you have your own automobile insurance, look at that, you're covered anyway for a rental car.
But let's say you don't have your own auto insurance. Maybe you don't drive in real life, but you get a rental car on a
If you don't have your own auto insurance, then I definitely recommend taking the coverage. But remember, it's the most expensive thing you're going to have, renting a car. It's more expensive sometimes than the car itself.
That's a good point. Peter Greenberg, as always, thank you.
You got it.
Happy holidays.
And turn your BlackBerry off.
Done.
Even though it doesn't matter.
Exactly.